Congratulations, you've got your medical cannabis prescription. After all, it's legal in the UK. Your doctor prescribed it, take it every day. So when you're planning your summer holiday to Spain or that business trip to Dubai or visiting family in the States, can you just pack it in your suitcase? The short answer, yes, if you're willing to do the admin, but it also depends on where you're traveling to. Getting it wrong could mean anything from having your medicine confiscated to years in a foreign prison. I'm Niels, and this is Psychoactive Minds. Today we're talking about traveling with medical cannabis from the UK. Businessman Adam Windish won a landmark 15-month legal battle against the UK Border Force after they unlawfully seized his prescription medical cannabis. The court ruled the seizure illegal, solidifying the rights of patients to travel into the UK with legitimate prescription medication. I spoke with Robert Jappie, a partner at Field Fisher law firm who successfully defended Mr. Windish.
He had all of the relevant documentation with him, and he still got detained for several hours and his medication was taken from him. These types of incidents will unfortunately still arise.
Before we get into the how-to, we need to talk about why this matters. Because these aren't hypothetical scenarios. There are real people whose lives were upended because they traveled with cannabis. February 2022, WNBA star Brittany Griner lands at Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport. Russian customs officials found vape cartridges containing less than 1 gram of cannabis oil in her luggage. She had a prescription for it in the United States. She said she packed in a hurry, but it was an honest mistake. Didn't matter. Russia sentenced her to 9.5 years in prison. August 2021. Mark Fogel, a 61-year-old American teacher, arrives at the same Moscow airport with 17 grams of medical cannabis in his luggage. For context, that's less than a month's supply from a UK clinic. He'd been prescribed it in Pennsylvania for chronic back pain after spinal surgery. He taught at an international school in Moscow and had been living in Russia for nearly a decade. Mark Fogel was sentenced to 14 years in a Russian penal colony for large-scale drug smuggling. 14 years for medicine prescribed by his doctor. He spent 3.5 years in brutal conditions before finally being released in February 2025. Not because Russia recognized medical cannabis, but again as part of a prisoner exchange. These cases happen in Russia, yes, but Russia isn't the only country with a zero-tolerance policy for cannabis, medical or otherwise. Before you travel with your prescription, you need to know exactly what you're walking into. Right, so you're a UK medical cannabis patient and you want to travel. Here's what you need to do before you even check the rules for your destination country. First, understand the UK side of things. If you're traveling with 3 months supply or more of cannabis, which is a controlled drug under UK law, you need an export license from the UK government. You must apply at least 10 working days before travel. For shorter trips, less than 3 months supply, you don't need an export license, but you absolutely must carry your prescription in its original packaging from the pharmacy with your name, medication name, and dosage clearly labeled. A letter from your prescribing doctor or clinic stating that the medication is medically necessary, a copy of your prescription, both physical and digital backup. Many UK cannabis clinics will provide a free travel letter specifically for this purpose. Curaleaf, Relief, Sapphire, all the major clinics offer this. But you need to request it at least 30 days in advance. Don't wait until the week before your trip.
In general, what we advise patients is if you're carrying your medical cannabis around with you, then the things that you want to have on you are your most recent prescription. If you can, keep your medication in the original packaging with the pharmacy label on there as well, and a form of ID, right? So if you've got your prescription, your pharmacy label, and a driving license or a passport, and all of that information matches up, then any official, any police officer should be satisfied that you are a legitimate patient and you have this cannabis in your possession for the right reasons. If you're traveling internationally, then first of all, it's always a good idea to check with the local embassy or the Home Office. And in fact, this is something that Adam did. He contacted the Home Office and said, "Am I allowed to travel to the UK?" And he received positive information, so he knew he was in the right. It's always good to check that. It also can be helpful to get a letter from your doctor or your clinic just saying that you are permitted to travel and have that in writing as well. But ultimately, we're just trying to encourage patients, have your prescription or a photo of it at least on your phone, have the pharmacy label and have your ID. As long as all the info on those 3 items match, then it's very, very difficult for the authorities to take any further.
In 2024, UK residents made almost 95 million trips abroad. The most popular destinations? Spain, France, Italy, Turkey, the USA, Greece, Portugal, Ireland, Germany, and Poland. Let's break down what traveling to these countries actually means for medical cannabis patients. Tier 1. Complicated, but possible with the right preparation. Tier 2. Local prescription is more feasible than a travel permit. Tier 3. Caution. If drug tested, trace amounts can get you jailed. The Schengen area includes 29 European countries. Under Article 75 of the Schengen Convention, you can travel between these countries with controlled medications, including medical cannabis. But, and this is a big but, each country has different requirements. Some require a Schengen certificate or declaration for controlled substances. All the relevant links are in the description below the video. Narcotic or psychotropic drugs like medical cannabis can only be imported by the person they were prescribed to, and quantities should generally not exceed a 1-month supply. When traveling from outside the Schengen area, for example the UK, it's also advised to carry a copy of the prescription detailing the type, name and dosage of the medication.
Europe is generally quite medical cannabis friendly. Okay, medical cannabis is legal in a number of EU jurisdictions, and under the Schengen arrangements, any EU citizen can move freely amongst all member states with their medication, so they don't have any interference at all. UK's never been part of Schengen, but even when we were in the EU, we had some carve-outs from Schengen which we abided by, and that included travel with medication. So even prior to legalisation in the UK, a Dutch citizen who had a medical cannabis prescription was permitted to travel to the UK with their medication, even though medical cannabis wasn't legal here. Now, medical cannabis being legal here in the UK, there's obviously mutual recognition. There is still a number of EU regulations that we comply with. So generally, travel in Europe with your medical cannabis should be no issues at all.
Outside the Schengen area, things get much more complicated. Turkey only recognizes licensed CBPMs prescribed by Turkish doctors. Foreign prescriptions generally have no legal validity at customs. The USA, Canada, and Australia all have medical cannabis programs, but foreign prescriptions are not recognized. In many cases, it would actually be easier to obtain a local prescription than attempt to travel with your medication. In Canada, you need an individual exemption from Health Canada. These are issued case by case and only in rare exceptional circumstances, such as palliative care cases. In the United States, cannabis remains federally illegal, even though it's legal in many states. You cannot bring cannabis into the United States under any circumstances. Full stop. Don't try. If you're staying for an extended period, you need to see an American doctor and obtain a prescription through their state program, or limit your travel to states that allow recreational use. Australia is slightly more nuanced. You can carry small amounts of medical cannabis into Australia by ship or aircraft under a traveller's exemption. However, flights from the UK usually involve layovers in other countries, some of which strictly prohibit cannabis. Even if you're not leaving the airport, carrying cannabis through those jurisdictions can still be illegal.
Outside of Europe, patients need to be careful. They need to make sure they check with the local embassy where they're travelling to and get something in writing, an email preferably, to confirm they're fine to travel. And look, there's obviously some jurisdictions where it's just a terrible, terrible idea to try and travel with anything cannabis related. Make inquiries, obviously, with the local embassy, but do take care because they have very, very strict laws in relation to possession of cannabis or any other drug for that matter.
Now, we need to talk about the countries where you should never, under any circumstances, travel with cannabis. Not medical cannabis, not CBD, no trace amounts, nothing. 34 countries still retain the death penalty for drug offences, including cannabis. According to Harm Reduction International, in 2024 alone, at least 615 people were executed for drug-related charges worldwide. The majority in Iran, Saudi Arabia and Singapore. Let's be very clear about what this means. Dubai and the UAE have zero tolerance. Even trace amounts of THC in your bloodstream from cannabis you consumed legally weeks ago in the UK can result in arrest and imprisonment. Minimum sentence, 4 years in prison. Dubai is a major connecting hub for flights to Asia and Australia. Many UK travellers transit through Dubai. Do not take medical cannabis through Dubai. Do not even transit with it. Singapore. Trafficking more than 500 grams of cannabis carries a mandatory death penalty. And in some cases, possession can be interpreted as trafficking. In 2024, Singapore executed 8 people for drug offences. Even very small amounts are treated with extreme severity. Saudi Arabia. Drug trafficking, including cannabis, can result in death by beheading. In 2024, Saudi Arabia executed 122 people for drug offences, a 6,000% increase in executions over the previous year. 15 of those executions were cannabis related. China, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, Egypt, Yemen all impose either death penalties or extremely harsh prison sentences for cannabis possession. I cannot stress this enough. I didn't know is not a defense. It's medicine where I'm from does not matter. Foreign legal systems do not care about your UK prescription. Consequences are real, severe, and life-altering. So what should you do if you're stopped by Border Force or Customs? Unfortunately, having the right documentation doesn't always guarantee a smooth passage, but it does give you legal standing if things go wrong. Document everything, stay calm, and remember that you do have legal rights, even if officers aren't aware of them.
Regarding confiscation of medication, a police officer has to have reasonable grounds to suspect that your medication is not legitimate. The difficulty, obviously, is that there's a lack of awareness that medical cannabis is even legal here. So yes, it is frustrating, unfortunately, until we get the awareness out there that medical cannabis is legal and that it's a prescription medication and should be treated like every other prescription medication. These types of incidents will unfortunately still arise, but we're working hard to try and reduce the number. And it's heartening to see some police associations now are preparing guidance for officers and issuing that guidance to officers so that they understand what they should and shouldn't do if they do encounter a person with a legal prescription.
The stories of Brittany Griner and Mark Fogel aren't meant to scare you, though they should make you cautious. They're reminders that we're living through a period of massive transition in how the world treats cannabis. Medical cannabis is legal in the UK. That's huge progress. But international travel with it? The harsh reality is that the world hasn't caught up yet. Your medicine may be legal at home, but that legality doesn't travel with you. Until international drug treaties are reformed, and that could take decades, medical cannabis patients face real barriers to international travel.
I think patient numbers are going to really start to tick up very fast in the next couple of years. I'd be very surprised if we didn't hit 500,000 patients here in the UK in the next 3 to 4 years, right? So these issues are going to arise more and more. It's just about making sure you have the right documentation and that you've done your due diligence on your destination country, right? Be calm with the border force officials, have your documentation ready, and just make sure that they understand you've made inquiries and you're very, very clear that you are in the right. And hopefully word will spread, from cases like Adam's. We've got this guidance going out to police now. Hopefully there'll be some guidance being issued to customs agents at some point too. So hopefully we can be in a position where medical cannabis patients can travel freely and also feel relaxed in travelling as well. I think probably the anxiety caused by these types of issues is significant too. But there's still a lot of work to do. We've seen incidents of people being taken off airplanes. So there's a lot of work to do with the transport companies themselves as well. We keep going, and that's why it's nice to see patient numbers going up, because awareness will spread too.
At the end of the day, medicine should be medicine. No patient should ever have to choose between their treatment and their right to see the world. We don't take insulin away from diabetics. We don't confiscate asthma inhalers at the border. And one day, hopefully, medical cannabis will be treated with the same basic common sense. Until then, travel carefully, prepare thoroughly, and know the risks. And if you're a medical cannabis patient who's traveled internationally or had problems at the border, share your experience in the comments. Your story might help the next patient travel more safely.